Orwin, North Carolina is a small town located just south of the state line with Virginia. The population of Orwin proper is 2,037, with another 200 or so people living in the area around the town. Close by, the town of Roan Valley is much larger, with a population of roughly 10,000, not counting students at the regional Roan Valley University. Most people have never heard of Orwin, and those who have generally don't think of it as the sort of place where the events of March 14th, 2008 could have taken place. Orwin is anywhere USA, a peaceful little slice of Americana, where farm kids drive around in Ford trucks, grandma still cooks apple pie, and the biggest news story is usually related to the performance of the high school football team in state competition, where in 2007 it made the finals. Still, that doesn't change the horrifying reality of what happened there. And even though the scars are healing and life is slowly returning to normalcy, no amount of time will ever wash all the blood from the field near the Ulberson Homestead farm. The story of what happened in Orwin is as complicated as it is terrifying, but most sources seem to agree that the first report of anything unusual occurring in the still unaware community came into the Orwin Police Department late in the evening at 7:34 p.m. Two elderly women, driving 4 miles outside of town on a rural back road, called in to tell police that they had seen something strange in the forest across a grassy field. When asked to describe what they had seen, they told the officer on the phone that it was something large but indistinct because of the branches obscuring their line of sight. The police decided that the situation was probably nothing to worry about and didn't send anyone out to investigate what the elderly women had seen. The next calls came in just before sunset at 7:53 and 7:55. They came from a farmer who was doing late work feeding his livestock, and from a young man coming out of the woods after a solo hiking trip, respectively. The latter described what he saw as a black animal moving through the trees by the hiking trail. Like the two elderly women, he did not offer a detailed description of the animal, but seemed to believe that it was very large, and felt horrified by what he had seen. He said in a later interview that he had run out of the forest, scared that the animal might follow him, or that there might be others. The farmer described a scene similar to that viewed by the elderly women, saying that he had seen something in the forest across the field from his farm. It had apparently bothered his livestock, particularly the goats, which seemed terrified and did not sleep throughout the night. More sightings came in before nightfall, with an increasing frequency, until calls were coming in to the small town's police station every few minutes. Some of them came from people who were absolutely terrified by what they had seen. One woman, alone in her house, said that she had heard something brush against the wall outside of her kitchen, and had gone to the window over the sink to see what looked like black, leathery skin pass by. She stayed on the line with police until her husband arrived, then went with him to a motel for the night, too scared to go back to her house. Before 8 o'clock, the sun didn't take very long to sink beneath the horizon outside of Orwin, and then things took a disturbing turn. Whatever was in the forest seemed to get more active at night, and so did another, very human force living inside the town. At 8:36, driving along a dark highway between Roan Valley and Orwin, a group of college students in an SUV saw a sight in their headlights which completely dumbfounded them. A cloister of around 8 men, dressed in black robes, crossed the road in front of them, forcing them to stop. One of the men, according to all the students, paused to look at the SUV before moving on. The young man got a good look at the individual, which helped to identify him later as Gregory Santiago, a prominent banker and respected member of the community. Behind the robed men, the college students reported seeing something else cross the road, presumably one of the animals which others had been encountering. They described it as being larger than an elephant, with 6 legs and pitch black skin. They stated that, although they couldn't see far above the tops of its legs, they believed the animal to be at least 40 feet tall, with pointed spines or possibly tentacles sticking out of its back, pointing up towards the sky. They didn't describe the animal as having eyes, but they stated that it did have faces covering its flanks, 5 in all, one of which had a large mouth, opened in a permanent scream. The students drove into town, arriving at 8:53, after 2 other people had independently reported sightings of similar animals in the fields around Orwin. None of the other reports which came in that night were as detailed as the students' account, however, nor were any of them quite as baffling or horrifying in light of later events. It was at 11:47 that the occurrences in Orwin ceased to be simply strange and turned into something much worse. 8.5 miles outside of Orwin, Janet and Neil Olberson, along with their 6-year-old daughter Natasha, experienced a nightmare which none of us can ever really imagine. A group of invaders broke into their home, shattering the window in their living room, and shot Neil Olberson dead. These murderous intruders were later discovered to be the same 8 men who the Roan Valley University students had seen crossing the road, and were found to be members of a cult called the Sacred Arm of Calhounlat. After killing Neil Olberson, the 3 cultists who broke into the home, later identified as Nathan Henson, Daniel Walker, and his brother Norm Walker, took Janet and Natasha Olberson hostage, dragging them outside of the house and into the field behind it. There, both were tied to a rocky outcrop near the forest and surrounded by the ring of 8 men. The cultists chanted loudly, calling out to the stars in the clear sky high above, and bellowing for their goddess to come and accept her sacrifice. What happened next is a matter of contention and controversy. Those who tend to believe the account of Natasha Olberson, which was given 2 weeks later after the child went through intensive psychotherapy, something simply unimaginable came out of the forest and took her mother. Natasha told investigators in the case that she had turned away after the monster took her mother, but that she believed it killed her. Investigators later stated that, although they could not accept her testimony on the grounds that she was likely suffering from intense psychological trauma, the basics about the event were correct. Her father and mother had both been killed by 8 men, all of whom had been members of an occult group. Before the 8 men could be located and brought to trial, however, they all either vanished off the radar or were found to have committed ritual suicide. 2 are believed to have fled to Mexico following the incident, while the whereabouts of 3 of the others are not known. All 3 of the men who broke into the Olberson household are presently known to be dead. It was in their homes that relics related to the cult of Calhounlat were found, tying the obscure, almost unknown group to the horrible crime. Natasha Olberson is currently in foster care and is living in an unknown location under the arm of the Witness Protection Program. Other than her account and those of other witnesses from that day in March of 2008, there's almost no evidence that anything out of the ordinary occurred in Orwin. Time will pass, but the bones of Janet and Neil Olberson will always be interred in the local cemetery beneath 2 lonely marble markers, testaments to a nightmare which no one can imagine, but which no one can forget. Okay, disclaimer. To the very best of my knowledge, this story is true. I don't expect to convince you. Truth be told, I've had a hard time coming to terms with it myself. Cliché as it may be, I really am a rational person, and if not for this, I would probably be the most stone-faced atheist you'd ever meet. But, after much internal struggle and debate, I have come to the conclusion that there are things in life that simply can't be explained with reason, at least in the form in which we know it. Logic, for all the trust we place in it, is really nothing more than a candle, all too easily snuffed out. And when it's gone, we're left alone in the dark, and everything we would scoff at by daylight suddenly becomes very believable. Alright, before I wax too melodramatic, here's my story. I was very young, only 4 or 5 at most, before either of my siblings were born. It was just Mommy and Daddy and me, living in our little house in Great Bend, Kansas. Very quaint. We were a young family, without much money, and most of our furniture was second-hand. It was the middle of the day. Summer, hot, boring. I was playing marbles by myself on the thin carpet beside the huge, old flower-patterned couch. Mom was down the hall in the kitchen, and Dad was at work. Why I was trying to roll marbles around on the carpet, I don't know. We had a perfectly good linoleum floor, after all. But there I was, swishing the marbles back and forth, happily bouncing them into each other. Then, in my overzealous enthusiasm, I rolled too hard. My favorite marble, the clear ruby red one, zipped into the dark space under the couch and was lost. Darn it, Dad wasn't home. He was the only one strong enough to move that huge old couch for me. I'd have to get my marble back myself. I reached my hand under the couch, tentatively at first, then deeper. Encountering no marbles, I pulled my hand out in disappointment. Then, a hand reached out from under the couch back at me. I remember the image vividly, and I suspect I always will. It was a slim hand with tapered fingers, a woman's hand. It was gnarled and wrinkled as if aged, and it was dead black. Not black as in African, black as in dead. Of course, back then I didn't know that corpses blacken as they decompose, so I didn't know what the black meant. The hand reached out to me as far as it could, which was just up to the wrist. Then it retreated under the couch, then emerged again, this time pushing with it a little crumpled up plastic bag with a logo on it I didn't recognize. It waited, as if expecting me to take the bag. Then, when I didn't, it pulled the bag back under the couch and was gone. I got up, walked down to the kitchen, and told my mom what had happened. Why didn't I run screaming, or at least run? I don't really know. All I can say is, I was a little kid. A hand reaching out from under the couch at me didn't seem like that huge a deal. I hadn't yet learned what was and was not permissible in reality. I had no worldview. Mom was skeptical, but walked me back to the couch and explained how I was probably imagining things. She even reached her hand under the couch to convince me that nothing was down there. Later, Dad lifted the couch up for me, and the only thing under it was, of course, my missing marble, plus a few more I didn't even remember losing. But here's the scary part. For years I remembered this. I even developed a weird fantasy of little hand people living under the couch, and I, in my childlike innocence, believed that they would catch me and take me away if I ever reached into their domain again. Then as I grew older, I wrote the memory off as a dream I had as a child. Cute, but silly. Then, a few years ago, I recounted the story to my mother. She gave me a funny look and told me she remembered it because, after all, she had been there. She told me that she remembered me coming to her in the middle of the day and telling her about the hand under the couch, and remembered being highly disturbed by my story, since I was an extremely quiet and well-behaved kid who didn't ever lie. Then she told me about the couch itself. According to her, she and Dad had gotten the couch from the estate of an old woman who had actually died on it. And this was the first time I had heard about this. but it sure explained why they got rid of the couch within a month of my story. But here's the part that truly frightens me, even to this day. The part that I have to try so hard to get out of my mind some nights. Remember the bag the hand pushed towards me? I've never forgotten the logo that was on it. And recently, as in a few years ago, I saw the same logo again on what looked like the same type of bag in a hardware store. It was a bag of utility razor blades. Let's talk about YouTube. The site was founded in February of 2005 by 3 former PayPal employees by the names of Steve Chen, Chad Hurley, and Joed Karim, who were inspired to create a user-friendly and intuitive video file sharing site when they were having difficulty sharing a video of a dinner party at Chen's apartment. The first video to ever be uploaded to the site was put up on April 23, 2005, under the name Me at the Zoo. It's 19 seconds long and features Karim talking about the elephant display at a local zoo. As of the writing of this text, it has over 8.7 million views. In May 2005, YouTube opened up for public beta testing, and 6 months later, in November, YouTube officially launched. From its first public beta to its official launch to now, YouTube has found itself hosting billions of videos, with hundreds of thousands being uploaded each day. It has grown into the single most popular video sharing site ever, and is among the top 5 most popular websites on the entire internet. Most of the videos people watch on YouTube have showed up on the front page of the site, with at least a couple 100,000 views or more. Most of the videos you personally have watched probably had anywhere between 500 and 1,000 views. Rarely does anyone find themselves lurking around in the darker, more obscure corners of YouTube, crawling with the videos that have less than a dozen views. But of course, that place exists. Not every video among those billions is going to get much attention, and I've always thought there's something special about being a part of a view count that you can number on one hand. You watch a video with like 5 views, and you're among a select few that has ever witnessed whatever was filmed. Unfortunately, it's more often than not something stupid and not worth watching, which accounts for the low views. Nowadays, the site is very heavily moderated, and not even the most obscure video can pop up with a penis in it without being deleted immediately. But how about we wind the clocks back 7 years? On November 21st, 2005, not long after YouTube's official launch, a particular YouTube account was opened under the rather unspectacular name of Dennis100. 3 days later, on Thanksgiving, Dennis100's first video was uploaded, with the name Talking Turkey. The video, recorded on a low-quality camcorder, features a family sitting at a kitchen table picking apart a cooked turkey and eating it. It appears to be a recording of an average Thanksgiving meal, except all of the audio in the recording is replaced with a man loudly screaming, in an attempt to appear as though the turkey is screaming in pain as the family eats it. Near the end of the recording, the camera turns towards the small girl sitting at the table and zooms in on her face. The video fades to black shortly after the girl begins to cough violently, and then appears to start gagging. Throughout the entire video, a small pink watermark lingers in the corner, reading www.skippersbin.com. The description of the video was merely, "For Skipper." The video itself received less than 10 views, and no comments. Despite its appearance in the video's watermark, no domain has ever been registered under the name Skipper's Bin. 1 day later, another video was uploaded to the account, named Talking Turkey Behind the Scenes, with the same poor spelling and grammatical mistakes. The video is shakily filmed with another cheap camcorder, shot from behind the one that filmed the first video, which is mounted on a tripod. In the video, You can see two Caucasian individuals standing behind the tripod-mounted camera, dressed in jeans and dirty, plain white t-shirts. What is particularly strange, though, is that one is wearing a gorilla mask, and the other is wearing a plastic, cartoonish Dracula mask. Both persons are watching the family eat the turkey, and softly laughing to themselves. The video films the entire length of the first, with the man in the Dracula mask grabbing the tripod-mounted camera and panning it over to the little girl. Just as the small girl begins to cough and gag, the cameraman lifts a bottle of soap into the shot. He then lunges the bottle at the father, who falls over after the impact, while the rest of the family offers no reaction besides simultaneously gagging just like the girl. The three men behind the camera begin laughing hysterically, before the video abruptly cuts to black for around 3 seconds, and then ends. Just like the first video, and every video uploaded to the account, this one shares the same Skipper's Bin watermark, and an identical description, as well as a similarly low view count. Unlike the talking turkey video, though, this video received one comment from username Bogbox, reading, "LOL, good times, smiley face." Further investigation reveals that the Bogbox account was created one day after Dennis 100, and that it uploaded a single video, entitled "Open Up Skipper's Bin," which is nothing more than 20 seconds of black text on a pink background displaying the same non-existent URL as shown in Dennis 100's 2 videos. Dennis 100 did not upload any further videos until December 12th, at which point a new video with the title "Everybody's a Critic" appeared. In the video, a middle-aged, balding man in a stained wife-beater is seen hopping up and down rhythmically in a dimly lit garage. The camera is zoomed in very close to the man, and despite the low visual quality, the viewer can see the man is very badly bruised on his face, and has several scars across his forehead. The sound of glass shattering can be heard from below, and around a minute into the video, the camera zooms out, revealing the 2 men in the gorilla and Dracula masks from the previous video, pulling glass bottles out of a crate sitting beside them, and throwing them at the man's bare feet, causing him to dance. Throughout this first minute and 30 seconds of the video, generic disco music is playing over the audio as you watch the man dance pathetically on shards of broken glass, with blood smearing the floor. Then, the music abruptly cuts out, and a third man walks into frame wearing a brown paper bag on his head, with 2 makeshift eye holes cut out and a smile haphazardly scribbled onto it with black marker. The paper bag man begins to scream into the ear of the dancing man, shouting expletives and insults at the man, as well as harshly criticizing his dancing. Throughout the shouting, the dancing man begins to cry. The paper bag man then turns to the camera and shouts, "Can you believe this?" and points his thumb at the dancing man, who does a sort of ballerina twirl and collapses onto the floor. Then the video fades to black. What's interesting about this particular video is that, being the first time any of the men talk, one can detect a very vague and indistinct Eastern European accent from the paper bag man. Seems like a lot of the weird stuff on the internet originates from that area, doesn't it? 10 days later, on December 22nd, Dennis 100 uploaded a 4th video, entitled "Having Too Much Fun," which is filmed from within a child's bedroom. The camera is set down on a dresser, and is filming the paper bag man jumping up and down on a bed. Off to the side, barely in frame, the gorilla man is ramming a crippled teenage boy in a wheelchair over and over again into the wall. The kid is crying while this happens, and the gorilla man is laughing loudly, and continuously gets rougher and more vicious each time he does it. While the Dracula man does not appear in this video, off in another room you can vaguely hear the repetitive creaking of a bed, as well as feminine screaming and sobbing. This goes on for around 2 minutes and 15 seconds, before the creaking in the other room stops and a loud thud is heard. At this point, both the Gorilla Man and the Paper Bag Man stop what they're doing, and the Paper Bag Man yells out, "Are you done in there?" Which is replied to with a muffled, "Yeah." The Paper Bag Man then hops off the bed, grabs the camera, and the video ends as someone off camera mutters, "That was quick." The video received another comment from Bogbox, reading, "Best night ever. Thank you, Skipper." Another month of inactivity went by before Dennis100 uploaded his fifth and final video on January 14th, 2006. This one, titled Bad Luck Lewis, shows a dazed man sitting at a small plastic table, likely one meant for small children, in the middle of what appears to be the corner of a much larger warehouse. Behind the camera, he's asked what his name is, and he mumbles a response in a tired tone, "Lewis." He's then asked a few more questions which, along with their answers, are incomprehensible and cannot be heard over the sound of the Dracula Man walking into frame with a tape recorder that is continuously playing a voice that repeats 7 years bad luck over and over again. The interview between the cameraman and Lewis goes on under the loud recording that the Dracula Man is playing for around 5 minutes. During the entire length of the interview, Lewis appears to occasionally drift off to sleep. After the 5-minute mark, the Gorilla Man quickly runs into frame and smashes a mirror over Lewis's head, and he collapses immediately onto the table. The Dracula Man then grabs the shards broken off the mirror and begins frantically stabbing himself in the stomach with them, screaming 7 years bad luck, while the Gorilla Man and Paper Bag Man laugh hysterically. The video then abruptly ends about 10 seconds later. None of his 5 uploaded videos ever got over 15 views. His account, along with Bogbox's, have both since been deleted, and the videos lost. The website skippersbin.com neither then nor now has ever existed, and who Skipper is, I don't know. I can't claim to be capable of leaving you with any more knowledge about these videos than when you began reading. If you wanted to see them, I'm sure you could download one of them deep in the bowels of some obscure file-sharing site that you shouldn't be downloading anything from to begin with. But I doubt you'll ever find them. If you wanted to know the point of this story, there isn't really much of one. Just thought I'd inform you of what's been happening in the darker, more obscure corners of YouTube, crawling with the videos that have less than a dozen views.